Welcome to the Interzone, a show about the Microsoft 365 Intelligent Intranet. I'm Mark Cashman, here with my co-host Chris, who's juggling these days like he's trying out for the circus, McNulty.
Well, thanks, Mark, and I really appreciate being to juggle the beginning of this topic. I know that you're going to be able to sit down in a few minutes with our guests, Lucy Hitz, who's the head of product marketing for Viva Goals, and Kevin Shively, who is our vice president of marketing for Viva Goals, who are both now part of the Microsoft family, what we call Blue Badges. So you're going to dig in with Lucy and Kevin to hear about everything in the transition from Ally, the company that we acquired last year, and how it's now become part of Viva as Viva Goals.
That is correct. I sat down and had a great conversation all about Viva Goals, what it offers, the backstory of progressing from the point of acquisition to today's milestone, which is pretty exciting. The team, any team at Microsoft reaching general availability is amazing, but to have done it in such a short amount of time from a point of acquisition to now an app in Teams, maybe it's more inside baseball, maybe kind of a sports reference, but it really is kind of an amazing progress that I've seen the Goals team coming from being an external company to being an app that runs in a very globally accessible 270 million people potential, all that good stuff with Microsoft Teams.
You have, for the second broadcast in a row, beat me to the first sports reference.
I think I have it in my secret notes that I don't show you. I've been trying.
It's funny, as you were saying that, I was trying to think of another one. Famed Giants, Patriots, and many other teams head coach Bill Parcells used to snicker about people in the first week of training camp. Like, you'd get a rookie who would come in and he'd make a single good play, and people would go to him after the game, after the practice, and be like, Coach, what do you think of him? And it's like, well, he ain't exactly ready for Canton. Canton being the home of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And it takes...
I think that's in Ohio, yes?
It is in Ohio.
Aha, look at that.
We're studying, yeah. But if you think about, when you just take a generic solution that wasn't built by Microsoft that's out there, it may have some Microsoft integrations with it. It may be built on Azure. It may not be. But there's all the things that have to happen for it to, A, show up as a Microsoft application with all those parts of user experience, along with all of that back-end integration that needs to happen from wherever it has been to get it to be able to run in an Azure data center, and all of the integrations that need to happen to our processes around support, around account teams, around purchasing. How do you find this new thing and buy it? There's tons of back-end work. So yeah, they really have gotten themselves ready for Canton in a very rapid measure here.
Very excited to have them on the team, lowercase t, and in Teams, capital T. But I have a question for you, even though I know we're not supposed to kind of take this as an interview style in the intro here, but I think you can bring a unique perspective that's very top of mind in using of the tool recently, and because of your new role now many weeks and months into it as a manager at Microsoft. And I know a lot of people ask, how does Microsoft use its own tools? And this one specifically, you're really driving and using the new Viva Goals experience to drive how your team is managed, the projects and products that they're working on, and how that ladders up to the broader organization for Microsoft 365 marketing and, of course, beyond. So my question to you as a manager is, how have you been using OKRs, both coaching your team to use them and laddering up to folks above you?
Oh, I think that's a great question. And it's a journey. It's not a simple process, but it's a powerful one. And so the idea of objectives and key results is not new to Ally or even new to Microsoft. This is something that was originally developed by Andy Grove back at Intel in the late 1970s. So the idea is basically, how do you create this matrix of objectives, the reasons why we're doing something, what your plan is around a given business area, and then key results. What are the elements that you can measure there that will go into supporting that objective? And the other thing about an OKR or a system of OKRs is that they're hierarchical. So, at higher levels of the organization, Jared may have an objective that talks about establishing modern work as a preferred solution for organizational productivity or something like that. And he may have some specific measures that sit beneath it about, expansion of the customer base or revenue or usage or customer sentiment, all of those different elements. If you start to break that down, if you look at the hierarchy of the organization, when you get down to, my area, we have some products that contribute to those roles. We also have some high-level objectives that kind of sit outside of the business about making our organization a great place to work, including measures around we want to make sure that people are empowered with solutions and tools that help them learn on the job. And so when you bring that back down across my team, for example, we have an objective about using our team as a great learning experience for everyone on the team, and some measurable key results about the numbers of external courses that we will share into the group and the number of opportunities that we'll present to people internally to present kind of their skills and superpowers.
Which adds, whether it's the goal itself, but it also contributes to, I know, one area that you focus on, which is knowledge within the enterprise. And if it supports that structurally, or maybe in an unstructured fashion, that's a really nice compliment.
When you look at whether it's the more pragmatic financial or numerical measures that we're going to develop so many partners or so many new customers or get so many blog posts out there, whichever those measures are, each of those contributes to an engagement goal for me. And then my goals get mapped to my bosses. And so what we're doing, maybe, the blog posts for Viva topics may be 10% of my target for what I want to do for outbound customer engagement in content services, which in turn may be 25% of my boss's target, which become 5% of his boss's target, but it's all connected and we do it all visibly. And so for one thing, as a manager, it really helps someone who's looking at an individual item they have and understand, how does this contribute to what everyone else needs to see happen? What are other people doing? That visibility across the matrix is really important. The other thing that we found is it kind of reverses the discussion. So if you sat down and, as we did, went through, multiple weeks and workshops about what are our goals, what are the top line goals, how do we want to state our team objectives, and which results can we measure? The flip side of that is when some new scope of work comes along, it means that one of two things has happened. First, we didn't think broadly enough in our OKRs, or this is something that we've just always done, or something that we should do. And it's not saying that we're not going to do that. Like if someone comes to me with, hey, there's a new conference we want to support, like, which objective are we trying to solve here? And if it's not saying we're not going to do things, but if focus is that decision-making around, does this contribute or not? Because if it contributes, great. And if it doesn't, let's talk about why we're doing it. Not saying no, but it's a very helpful lens, because otherwise, without that process and without that feedback, people can continue doing the things they think that they should do because they're working disconnectedly.
Having the visibility to what is impactful and what is your impact, I think is that end milestone of being very clear about it, top down, bottom up, side to side. And for the individual, once they sign up and have understanding of what their real objective is, that there should be a great transparency to it, but also a benefit to not feeling siloed or out of the loop or non-impactful. And
sometimes it's just a great avenue for curiosity. I think anyone at Microsoft, anyone at most organizations, you benefit from a healthy level of curiosity about learning more about how your organization works and what people are doing. And, it's a chance for discovery. And you can look at a largely disconnected part of the business and see, oh, that's what they're looking at doing this year. That's really interesting. And it may stimulate other thinking, or reach out to the folks who own those OKRs to see, why did you pick those, or how are you measuring those? So it's just another set of tools to add to the toolbox to help keep people connected. If you think about, many of Microsoft's tools are there to help you stay connected to chat, to emails, to news and conversation. This is just a different way for people to participate in the business. And I think it's a powerful one. What have some of your impressions been, Mark?
My impression is that it does everything you just said. As an individual, I have a lot of clarity on what are my primary goals and objectives, and how do I go about them in a measurable fashion. Not everything is measurable, but the important things that will lead in and ladder up. There's a number of events that I support on behalf of the team. There's a number of ways that we go to market with lists. There's the ways that I contribute to the Viva team, and there are things that I can at least have a yes/no conversation with my manager that then makes sense to how it supports the broader good of the business. And I like it. It's an easy tool to use. I have visibility up and across so that I can see what my peers are doing and what the rest of the organization is up to. And to be honest, sometimes I use it as a tool to get a little who's working on what, because as you navigate the hierarchy of the goals, I can also see who's working on specific goals. But I think your visibility as a manager, my use as an individual, should lead us into understanding the value of how this tool supports hierarchical structures, but also it really is intended so that as individuals and as contributors, everybody is feeling that connective tissue for the sake of the business.
Yeah, if you bring it back to, one of our taglines for Microsoft Viva, because goals is very much part of Viva, and Viva is intended to help individuals and teams be their best. To optimize the employee experience and well-being. And you've heard us say this stuff so many times, the audience can probably repeat it. Mark, I'm sure you can as well. But I'm struck by a conversation I had with someone on my team around just the idea of having goals in the first place, because this person comes from a marketing capacity, and they are very used to focusing on their outputs being things which contribute to the success of engineering and introducing a new feature or a new product. And here's how engineering measures this. And the dialogue about it's okay for you as an individual to have goals and have measurable results, and use that to help shape the communication about your impact and what contributions are happening around you to help that impact. Everyone's allowed to have goals. And that's, I think, another powerful change here.
And to that, I say, Chris, and to the Intrazone audience, are you ready to hear from Lucy Hitz and Kevin Shively to all things Viva Goals?
We are.
So we are now joined with Lucy Hitz, Product Marketing for Viva Goals, and Kevin Shively, who's Vice President of Marketing for Viva Goals, both now Microsoft employees. Lucy and Kevin, welcome to the Intrazone.
Thanks for having us. Good to be here, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Happy to be here.
And I've gotten to know you a little bit with Microsoft Inspire now in our rearview mirror and upcoming, which is really exciting today, or if people are listening to this a little after the big day, you are now at general availability. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, huge milestone for the team. Really excited with what they were able to do in such a short period of time.
I imagine. I know, from our own product releases what that means. And to add the layer of having recently been acquired, maybe a few little changes in process and progress, but knowing now the outcome, I'd say you both landed really well. To get a little sense, just so folks know a little bit more about what you do at Microsoft previously, before joining Microsoft, Lucy, can you share a little bit more about who you are and what you do with Viva Goals?
Yeah, so I've been in SaaS marketing for quite a bit now. Went through one acquisition from Simply Measured to Sprout Social, and then landed at Ally to be director of content. And a few months later, found out we were being acquired by Microsoft. So pretty exciting turnaround. But Kevin and I have worked together for a while. We worked together at Simply Measured, and just excited to get the band back together. And I live in New York City and have a baby and a dog and a husband, not in that order.
I was going to say, I thought the baby was goals, Viva Goals.
I know. It did feel like that at times.
It's always nice to know that everybody has well-rounded work-life balance, whether it's balanced or not, but it sounds like it's pretty good.
Yeah,
Kevin, we maybe got a little inference of some of your history, but a little bit about what you do and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, sounds great. So I've been in SaaS marketing for a little over a decade now at this point, leading marketing teams specifically. Prior to that, I was in a completely different world. I was a journalist, specifically a sports writer, and kind of transferred a lot of that content understanding and the way that it impacts how you do things into what I do now. And so excited to be with Microsoft and working with the product marketing group around Viva Goals.
Well, I would be remiss on behalf of my co-host, who isn't here for us during this time, but he loves sports. Can you give us just a little sense of what were some of the things that you were covering when you were covering sports?
Sure. Yeah. So I covered a lot of college and minor league sports for the most part, as well as plenty of high school games. So had the fun experience of watching a lot of players grow up from their freshman year of high school all the way through their college careers or minor league careers in baseball or hockey. And really enjoyed the experience and the lessons that come out of having a 12 a.m., 1 a.m. deadline every day. So it was a great experience.
Well, it sounds like maybe preemptively you had a lot of experience with goals, maybe a lowercase g.
A little bit.
Well, the main objective for this episode is to get to the key result of getting the knowledge that's in your head out to our audience. And with that OKR out of the way, I thought we could start there, both defining for our audience who may not be super fluent yet on what Viva Goals is, and maybe, bounce between the two of you. If you were to give the 101 pitch, maybe Kevin starting with you and then, Lucy complimenting, how do you describe what Goals is, what it does? And we'll get into kind of the technical details and whatnot a little bit later, but start with the 101 elevator pitch.
Sure. So Viva Goals is a goal setting and goal management solution. And the core ethos behind that is around alignment and making sure your entire team across a company is aligned to those top line objectives and the business results that you need to drive. And when you think about today's world, as we're staring down a potential recession and everything else that's going on around us, the challenge of translating that strategy and those top line business goals and results that you need to drive into execution are really pervasive. I'll share a couple quick stats, then I will kick it over to Lucy. But two things that I think really highlight this. MIT recently looked at data from hundreds of large enterprise companies, and 97% of senior leaders say they understand what the company's strategic priorities are, but only 28% of them could name the company's top 3 goals. And so you can imagine how that compounds as you move further and further away from that core executive team. And Microsoft recently kind of complemented some of that research with our own Work Trends Index that found that 13% of frontline managers don't even understand how their work contributes to the company strategy. So it's a big disconnect. It's costing the business. And what Viva Goals does is help you connect what every individual or team or department's focus, goals, measures of success are back to those top line company goals.
Yeah, I have this vision of everybody flying in the same direction, but having different nests that they leave from, and if they don't know where to go, then the whole flight pattern gets ruined. Lucy, if we're still on the elevator, just a little understanding of maybe from an individual's perspective or a team manager's perspective, what is the value of them using Viva Goals?
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because from the other side of that coin is that simultaneously, employees really want to feel a sense of purpose and impact and clarity around what they're doing and why they open up their laptop every day or, go into their hybrid work environment, going a couple times a week and stay at home the other times a week or, whatever their work environment is, that they're looking for that purpose and that understanding of how they connect. So it goes both ways. It benefits, the business and the employees. We know now there's a great amount of research that Glint does and where we've surveyed employees across LinkedIn, across the landscape. And employees rank a sense of purpose and meaning as one of their top 3 aspects of work, only after a positive culture and mental health well-being benefits, which I think you could also argue directly connect to knowing, what you're doing and why. And more than that, more than individual purpose, it's shared purpose in particular drives this kind of sense of belonging and employee engagement. Feeling a sense of purpose in work makes employees 120% more likely to recommend their company as a great place to work, which then in turn, increases employee investment in the success of the organization. Two sides of the same coin there, I think.
I just was going to add to that. As you both can imagine, our group, my team specifically, is now using Goals. We were using Ally as kind of a pre-acquisition, and it has helped a lot. Both in my individual conversations with my manager, they have clarity with what I'm working on. Same goes, I know what's happening up above my head with a lot more visibility. And one individual thing that I've liked, which I would attribute it to Goals from a visibility perspective, but it also has just encouraged a new type of conversation, which is, what do we say no to? What aren't our goals, but we might get asked to do, 10 or 15 other things, and we may say yes still, but to have more of a concrete priority reason to say no, which helps, really keep me in line with my time, my health, like you just said, and well-being. And I would attribute a lot of that visibility. And how does it ladder up? Does it hit the priorities of what the business has said is important? If not, then it becomes a personal decision, but it also becomes easier to, manage those conversations, not to say a hard no, but to push back and say, I really can't, and here's why. So with goals in mind, and if people are more, comfortable with their well-being and more aligned with the business, I think a fun place for us to get a little bit of sense from you is moving from the name Ally.io to what is now Viva Goals. I think there's just interest in choosing a name and how does it fit what the product does. Anything in that realm, I assume that you knew it was going to be Viva something, but how did you all come from getting to Goals from Ally.io?
Well, we did a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of research in the market to find out, what people think when they think about goal management, when they think about OKRs, and really had a lot of deep conversations within the organization, within the PMM organization, and way higher above us about, what we want this product to do for organizations and for people. And we went back and forth with several different names. One was Viva Impact, because at the end of the day, that is part of what we're trying to accomplish here, is giving a sense of impact. But we really wanted something that was simplified, that was very clear to someone who had no familiarity with the product or what it does, that they would have a very clear understanding from the name about, what's going to happen when you click through into that app in your team's environment, or what's going to happen when you open the web app, that you're going to be accessing the goals for your organization and get that visibility.
Yeah, I think and ultimately, we're not a standalone solution in most cases. Viva Goals is a part of the broader Viva suite. So we wanted it to be crystal clear and something that was able to speak to the capabilities of the module.
Yeah, and along with the new name comes a new icon, which I think supports, visually, certainly, even if it's just thematically. And if I could describe it, I'm staring at it right now. It looks a little bit like a conch seashell on its side. There is maybe the pearl in an oyster, with the little swoop. I think it complements the theme of Viva. All the Viva icons now very much look like they're from the same family. Any opinions or thoughts on the icon choice, but also what it represents to you?
I love the icon choice. I think there's an allusion to a chart going up and to the right as well, which is exactly what you want to convey when you're talking about somebody reaching their goals. But the note that you just made about there being a pearl in the middle, and you kind of think of your OKR process as helping you get to those pearls that are the most important things that you're trying to accomplish as a business. I love that visualization. So I'm gonna steal that from you, Mark.
It's all yours. I'll give you my snorkel and the little special knife, so you don't ruin the plan. All right, so branding and iconography, congratulations, just inside of Microsoft. That usually takes a lot of effort with a lot of, let's just call them stakeholders that have opinions. The other thing that I was interested in, that I hope our audience would be really interested in as well, is per the acquisition, Ally.io, the actual interface where people would go and do a lot of the same work that they now do with Viva Goals, because you have had this technology for a while. In Ally.io, it was a website. And now Goals is an app in Teams. Any insights into just the technical aspects of going from one entry point and of course where the information was stored to then have that entry point be Teams?
One of the big pieces of that is that it is still a web app. There is still a standalone web app for Viva Goals in the new experience, but there's also this whole new first-party integrated experience within Teams, and there were just a lot of moving pieces to that. First of all, migrating all of our infrastructure and data and security and making sure we were building and living up to Microsoft security standards, which are the best in the world, was a massive undertaking for our engineering team to complete that migration. And the partners across the Microsoft ecosystem have been incredibly helpful in making sure we were doing that in the right way and doing it as efficiently as possible. I think it makes us a much stronger product and also sets us up for success in the future as we start to tie in across the Microsoft ecosystem.
Yeah, it positions us better than we ever, it gets us farther than we ever could have gotten alone as just Ally, because we're in the flow of work for the millions of users. I think it's millions of users who use Teams. 270
million monthly active users.
This is just a couple million.
Yeah, right. Just a few mil. But, it puts us right there. We're right at your fingertips. But then also we have, since we do have the standalone web app, to Kevin's point, it gives us the benefit of, for folks who aren't a part of the Microsoft shop, I know that's sacrilege, they can use it too and have that experience as well. So we kind of get to really meet customers where they're at.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges we hear from customers with adopting any new digital change within their company, but specifically with OKRs, which takes some change management to bring into your organization for the first time. You have to change your rhythms and how you interact. One of the challenges is the lack of being integrated to the tools where work is happening and the lack of that accessibility. So people are expected to learn a completely new system on some softwares, or if they're working in a spreadsheet. With the Teams interface, we're able to be right where folks are communicating every day. So those conversations around saying no or making a personal choice that you mentioned, Mark, are so much easier to do now, especially in a virtual world, because it's natively within Teams.
Yeah, you can check in directly from Teams. You can ask for progress from a stakeholder directly within Teams using the app, using a link from the app. You truly don't have to continue interacting with goals on a regular basis. You don't have to leave Teams. And I think that's also part of being in the flow of work is this other incredibly key component, which is getting out of the set it and forget it mentality with goals, which so often is a curse in organizations, big and small, of we spend all this time and all this intentionality putting together our goals. We even get them in one source of truth, and then we don't check in on them again until the end of the quarter, at which time it's too late
to do anything.
Right.
Yeah. And as I've seen, now starting to use your tool specifically, but also alongside some of the other new Viva modules as well, I see them more as not just integrated with Teams, but being an extension of capability that comes from Teams. So, if I want to share a goal with somebody, that shouldn't feel like I link them out to another app or website. The same as if I get reminded by now the goals bot, you have, to do some check-ins and it literally I can do it right there. And it doesn't feel like I either missed it or that it was really hard to do. And in the context of acquisitions, just in my Wayback Machine, I've seen us go through acquiring Yammer and integrating it into the suite. I've seen us, acquire things like Performance Point for BI, and another one, when we had the acquisition of a FAST, which is our search mechanism. And they all took a number of years to really be as a part of the server or the service. And your turnaround time, and I'm being very honest, was very quick and very smooth. So kudos to you and, of course, the engineering teams behind you to get to where you're at now. I think in any moving needle at Microsoft, when you have two teams that take dependencies on each other, and in your case, goals and teams, they very much complement, and they very much didn't slow each other down.
Well, I'll pile on. It is a really fast turnaround and amazing work. I've heard that it's a record for a Microsoft acquisition. So just to pile on for our E&D group, they're pretty impressive.
That's great. That's great. So, Lucy, just to start this next question with you, it is kind of derived from the recent work that you and I did together. You did, I think, most of the work, but I was helping support the deeper dive on Viva Goals that you had the session at Microsoft Inspire. And there was just a segment that got into the actions and tasks that admins can do, either to properly deploy, but also to enable, the how goals gets used in a certain organization. And so I thought we could spend a little time on what do admins need to know? And the admins I'm talking about are enterprise admins that have heard, the decision or helped make the decision to utilize Viva Goals and are now tasked to properly roll it out. What are some of the first things that we tell admins that they need to know before they really get, deep into the deployment phase?
One of the first things is to understand how you're going to roll out an organization. So if you're going to have a pilot group, which we typically recommend, and then expand into different parts of the company based on what you learn from that rollout, or if you're going to say, hey, like we're going large, we're rolling out all at once. I think another piece is understanding, part of what makes our product so amazing is its flexibility to the needs of any organization. So understanding what customizations you want to put into place. For instance, one of the benefits of OKRs and Viva Goals is that it provides that transparency, that visibility, as Mark, you even mentioned, you've experienced the benefit of in your own org. But there may be some OKRs of an organization, for instance, ones that are revenue-based for a public company, or ones that are, people resource-based, or, whatever, fill in the blank there, that you do want to remain private. And so, meeting with all stakeholders and leaders who will be involved and understanding, what those privacy concerns will be, so that those are things you can put into place, but they don't block the adoption of the product and rollout of the product. And then I think, another key component, which I guess you could consider a little softer, but does tie into the product adoption and I think into the admin role, is ensuring you have executive sponsorship. And that means building product usage into the rituals of the organization. So for instance, the dashboard feature we have allows you to really easily take the data of which includes like progress towards goals and what your metrics look like, and kind of flip it into a slide you can pull up on screen essentially and share your screen at a town hall or a team meeting or whatever. So kind of encouraging the usage of these features in rituals within your organization. So those are just some high-level starter package points, I would say. But Kevin, is there anything that you would add there?
No, I mean, I think that was a great walkthrough of what it takes. I think on the kind of the technical back end side, there are a host of admin tools that'll help you do this and create the right rhythms and create the right permissions and onboard your team into the tool specifically.
To some of our audience, there's this notion of a SharePoint history and having built things like a taxonomy. How are we going to describe our content so it's easier to find, it's easier to organize, those kinds of things. And with something that's very specific, like creating a goal or a KR, and having that be, a way to input it and a way to define it, the part that's behind it that I'd love to just understand more is the OKR model that customers can define and refine for themselves. And I thought, whether that's the admin or if that's just more of a business owner, can you just talk a little bit about what that means and what it takes to configure an OKR model?
So I think there are probably some technical pieces that need to fit into this, but in general, I'd recommend that the business owner is who's responsible for setting what that framework looks like, and that can mean how many layers of the organization their OKRs reach, whether it's just at the executive level or each department rolling up to the executive level or the teams beneath that or individuals. And then also there's the way their OKRs are structured. So OKRs, objectives and key results, pretty simple, basic framework. You have your objective. It's what you're ultimately trying to do. So we want to record a great podcast here. And then you have your KRs, your key results, that let you know how you've gotten there. And so those will be the measures of success. So, number of listeners, or we complete on time, or whatever those key results might be. Within that, though, there's some nuance to how you structure that. Do those key results cascade directly and become the next level down's objectives, or do we offer flexibility and the departments can set their own objectives that ultimately serve those company-wide OKRs? And so we recommend a flexible approach like that. I think it allows the next layer down, the departments, to do what they do best, but with that loose alignment. So we know how it all connects. We're able to see how it all connects. And the product does a great job of helping you do that in a structured way. So visually even, you're able to see how this all aligns up and rolls up to the top.
Yeah. And also, let's not forget too about connecting projects to the OKRs, because I think that's a really key component. And because of all the integrations we have with like Asana, with Jira, with, I don't know, you name a project management integration, and we either have it or we'll have it soon.
Dare I say Salesforce?
Salesforce, we do have that integration. I think that's the missing component often, and where OKRs kind of, I don't want to say go wrong in organizations, but kind of like evaporate, in that there may be these objectives and key results, what we want to achieve, how we know we're getting there, but how are we getting there? And that's what the projects do. And with the integrations, they kind of auto update in the app. And so you don't have to go in and manually, update that progress. But I think that's a really key component and provides that kind of customization and flexibility, no matter what your team is using in that respect.
I like there's the handshake of how we're going to approach using this tool. And the reality of our business is what it is, and it needs to be tracked and monitored in a certain way so we can best, be aware of what and also course correct as we go. I also like, as an end user or at whatever level, I happen to be an individual contributor at Microsoft, to whatever level I have the experience to go up or down through the different OKRs at the different levels. It is just that I can navigate up and see kind of how I fit in, and I can navigate down to that very distinct level of being able to explain. I told you I was going to do some events. Here are the events that I'm working on, and across the parts of my role, and having those conversations either tactically, because, we check in every quarter, or ad hoc, remind me, of these things, and I can easily walk through and be a little bit more guided even, to remind myself, which, if that is, at least an okay way to use it, you can always tell me, Mark, we're going to have to train you a little more. But it's kind of that. I wanted to also get into the fact that you've been using this tool, which may be extremely new for our next customer, or a lot of people who are listening to this that maybe aren't yet at the full deployment phase. They're still reviewing it. But so that people get a sense of, how best to use this tool. And maybe we can wear a couple hats here as both an end user and, somebody who is an IT pro, or maybe even a business leader. What would you put forth as things people should know as a good tip or trick when you first launch this app, or when you're in the first quarter milestone, how best to use it at that checkpoint? And anything is open, to listen. But I think from both of you, if Lucy, we can start with what tips or tricks would you share? And then Kevin, we'll get to the ones that you would like to add as well.
Well, Mark, I just also wanted to underline what you just said around one of your favorite features being just the visibility into what other folks are working on and how it connects to the work you're doing and the goals you have. And that seems so simple, right? Like, it seems like, of course, like every organization must have this, but really few do. And to me, that is one of the most exciting features, is having that visibility into what's happening across teams, above, below, all around. And then, with that, I think once Viva Goals, it's really embedded in an organization and the team's in the rhythm of interacting with the product, then I think it's like, hopefully you get to a point where any misalignments or double work or goals that are at cross purposes with one another are coming to light earlier because of that visibility, because these goals are no longer being set in silos, and what success looks like is being decided upon, by a larger collective group typically. And so to me, that's one of the most exciting parts of the product. So
I wouldn't say I felt as limited as this might sound, but for a long time, the priority or main OKR that we all operated under here at Microsoft, and probably still do to a large extent in the statement, is the OKR that says empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more, even if it's changed phrases here or there, over the decades. That's a great, very top level thing. But if you don't have the visibility of how to then make that real through, the broader notions of the different industries and different product families, and down to the feature levels and, engagement with customers, partners, and, our own peers, it gets very fuzzy very quickly.
Yeah. And I'll just answer your original question too, and just really quickly, almost by who you are. If you're a leader in that first quarter or first business rhythm of OKRs, just making sure you're building in, referring back to OKRs and referring back to progress into your team rituals. I would say that's the number one thing you can do, because your team's going to be looking to you for, hey, are we really using this? Are we really leveraging this or not? And then for managers, I think it's kind of a different flavor of that, but I think it's also making sure when you're sort of locking in your team's focus, that you as a manager proactively are checking in on your OKRs that you agreed upon as a team, and asking yourself, if I'm being asked for my team to take this on, does this fit into the larger business priorities we have as an entire organization? And starting to sort of think within that framework, if you aren't already. And then for employees, for every employee, I think it's beginning to, Mark, like you said earlier, begin to leverage the product to get really clear on what you're working on and why. And if you still feel like you don't have that clarity, talk to your manager about it and open up a conversation about it. And again, if you're being asked to put something else on a usually already overloaded plate, having that conversation about prioritization, pivoting, what is acceptable, what OKRs and work on your plate is acceptable to go to 70%, and what is not acceptable to go to that level. What do you need to really either meet or exceed? It just gives you a framework for those conversations. So I would say just leverage it, because I think the tool works if you work the tool, as they say.
And I want to say, for those that may have in the past held similar conversations, or just any form of conversation with a manager, or, even up above that, when you're having quarterly checkpoints with leadership teams, not always putting something into a PowerPoint slide and just actually opening up what is a live environment that shows you the progress. Me, selfishly, the fewer PowerPoint slides that I need to create, the better. And if it's really based on, either the data that I entered or data that's coming from these other systems per each, individual OKR, that's a big time saver. And hopefully it's just something where you can not have to prepare to go into the conversations. You already are doing what you need to do. And if you spend less time having to showcase, you already have a tool that can help you showcase. I like that part of that tip. Kevin, anything, whether it's an end user or something that you might think of, the initial adoption of, or once you've been using it for a while would be a good tip or trick before we maybe start talking about the future?
Yeah, so I think it ties nicely into what you've been talking about, but leveraging the tool to help establish some of the program rhythms and processes that you need to have in place in order for it to be effective. So we always recommend you establish a program manager for your OKR program. We call that an OKR champion. This doesn't have to be a full-time job, but it does have to be somebody who's accountable and focused on this. And leveraging the tool to figure out what your check-in rhythms are and make sure all of the integrations are set so people are getting those alerts in their inbox or in their Teams chat, and they know when they need to check in. They know when they're behind on an OKR. As a manager, I can see if my team is missing on something. That helps us stay on top of the work that we need to do and the pulse of the business in general. I know all the way up to our CVP Vetri, that's how he keeps tabs on the business. And number two is more philosophical, I think. The OKR framework is meant to provide a spotlight, not a floodlight. So you're capturing these core bets that you need to reach and these core things that you need to do to move the needle for the business. Capturing those and capturing those core projects is what's going to enhance that visibility that the two of you have been talking about. So if I'm taking a quick look at the company or our department and trying to see what it is that we're doing and how we're progressing to what we need to drive, I can't look through a laundry list and get that context. I need a more curated view. And so in terms of how you build out your Viva Goals instance, keeping it focused on those core bets, and that does create some difficult conversations early on, but those are the right conversations to have.
I like the visual of spotlight versus floodlight. It makes it easier to see the pearl that we were talking about earlier if you spotlight it. The nuance of the, not minutia, but just the breadth of everything that goes into everything that we all do. You really do have to kind of be mindful and pick and choose when you're having those conversations or when you're having checkpoints, or even just to remind yourself, the broader notion of what you're doing is the important thing, not necessarily the day-to-day. And to maybe just a little humor, but it's also a real fact, is our champion, and this was, I think, before I was aware of the acquisition, but we kind of saw it coming. Our champion, her name was Allie. And so we had a lot of fun with Allie from Ally, not from Ally, but Ally about Ally. But she was great. It really did take a lot of pushing, not for us to do it, but for us to understand how to do it. And, that she was kind of checking up with our leadership team and then kind of coming back and making sure everybody was in alignment. There was a little training, but there was also just yep, this is how we would like to manage our business. A new tool for us to leverage for everything that we've been talking about. So let's put a stake in the ground. We are, if people are listening to this, when we first released this episode on August 1st, 2022, you, the product, and everybody at general availability, it may not be fair to ask you this next question, but maybe in broader strokes, broader themes, what's coming next? What can people be at least aware of for goals in the future?
Yeah, boy, I'm really excited about what the next year or two looks like for Viva Goals and how this is going to continue to develop. So the core themes that I would think about when we're talking about our roadmap here, number one is just to embed deeply into the Microsoft ecosystem. So making sure your experience with Viva Goals across the different Viva modules, first of all, but also within Teams and other Microsoft 365 products is fluid and seamless, and you're able to access what you need within PowerPoint Live, for example, or Viva Insights is surfacing your OKRs as well. I think those integrations are what make us really be where work is happening for Microsoft customers and making this as seamless as possible so it does become an integrated part of how your company thinks about the business. And number two is just the external integrations. Not every tool that our customers use are going to be Microsoft tools. So making sure we're where work happens, wherever that is, whether it's an HRIS integration like Workday or new data integrations that are able to connect to their key results and update those things automatically. So they're spending less time doing manual check-ins. And number three, which is, I think, just as important, so I don't want to put this as a third priority here, really accelerating OKR success for our customers. So within the product, making sure we're setting people up for success with built-in best practices, guided experiences that are going to help them with the right recommendations and ultimately, get to the point where those are AI enhanced recommendations that are really helping them write and build good OKRs, manage their program the best way possible, and make the OKR champion's job so much easier by making so much of this happen at an automated level. And then obviously the security and peace of mind. So making sure we are creating a great admin experience where our IT admins or the program managers can help set permissions and bulk upload things and make sure that there are the security levers in place across a massive enterprise organization.
Sounds like a healthy roadmap.
It is a very healthy roadmap. Yep.
If I was to put it in the mind frame of a customer, lots of excitement. If I put it in the mind frame of engineering and marketing, a lot of work, a lot of good work to come, which is really exciting.
A lot of excitement on that end too. But yeah, a lot of good work.
Well, I want to give you, it might be belated, but welcome to Microsoft. It's really great to meet you both. It's really great to hear more about Viva Goals and to be a little part of it during Inspire and maybe as we move on to the later part of years, getting to work with you again, different shows, different releases, different upcoming milestones. But very much want to thank you for your time today on the Intro Zone, and thank you again for the work that you do out to our customers.
Thanks, Mark. Really appreciate you having us.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks for all your help at Inspire.
Well, Mark, that was a great conversation you had with Lucy and Kevin. Thanks for letting me listen in. Sorry I couldn't participate more. So up next on the Intro Zone, events. If there's an event going on around the world about Microsoft 365, the intelligent intranet, or anything related, we love featuring it and spotlighting it here on the Intro Zone. And coming up next on August 8th through 12th in Dallas, Texas is, drumroll please, 365 EduCon, the event formerly known as SharePoint Fest. Mark, what can you tell us about this one?
Well, I can tell you that Chris and I right now are actively working on a Microsoft Loop component for the agenda of our keynote. Chris and I are going to be co-presenting a keynote on effectively day 3, August 10th, to help kick off some of the primary breakout sessions and the rest of the week. And we'll be engaging in a Ask Microsoft Anything with all Microsoft employees that are supporting the event, engaging with the community, and just having a good old time in Dallas, Texas, sharing everything across Microsoft 365, Microsoft Viva, SharePoint Syntex, and on, and hopefully just having a great time engaging with the community and networking with those that want to hear more and be educated on 365 EduCon. The next event, if you look down just a little bit into September, is HR Tech. This is one, as it sounds, focused on human resources and all that they need to manage the expectations of employees and to support them throughout the year across multiple organizations. This is in person, September 13th through the 16th in Las Vegas at the Mandalay Bay Hotel. And it's poised to be a great event. There is a team here at Microsoft within Microsoft Viva is looking to support it in person, and they've got some great plans for the booth and some specific booth sessions and some of the broader outreach that we'll do through breakout sessions as well. So HR Tech, September 13th through the 16th.
Continuing on the month of September, the Power Platform Conference, September 20th to 22nd. This one will be in Orlando, Florida, and it is covering all things Power Platform and related. Citizen developer, orchestration, applications, and even a little bit of content automation. I will probably drop in to show off to that audience, but that is coming up again in late September.
Yeah, I'm excited that you're doing a little bit more at the Power Platform Conference. It's a compliment to how the Power Platform is being integrated beyond itself. About that same time, end of September, is the European Cloud Summit. That's September 26th through 28th in Mainz, Germany. And great team behind it. If you know the Cloud Summit and the Cloud team that has multiple events throughout the year, they always put on a great show. They pull in great speakers, and it is always just a really great place to get informed and get connected. So if you're in that part of the world or feel like flying over to Germany, if you're from the US, one of those things where you can guarantee it's going to be a great event experience. September 26th to the 28th, European Cloud Summit.
And then wrapping up the month of September, 365 EduCon. You heard it before, I'll say it again. But this time, it'll be in Chicago. It won't be as good because Mark and I will not be doing the keynote. But other than that, it will be fine.
But I can tell you the plans for that keynote, I have seen a little bit around the corner of what they're planning. I can't quite share just yet who or what, but it'll be a great show. And the folks that are getting behind that keynote know what they're talking about and always put on a great show.
Yeah, I've spoken at their event in Chicago before. It's a great part of the country, and I'm going to miss out on the opportunity to see what it's like when it's not sub-zero. It's a really worthy event. It's 5 days of workshops and breakouts and a chance to intersect with vendors and MVPs, and highly recommended if you're in Chicagoland or even beyond. And of course, if there's other events coming up, and of course there will be, we would love to feature them on a future episode. If you have one, please write to us and let us know.
We want to thank our guests, Lucy Hitz and Kevin Shively, for being on the show and for giving us and you new goals to set our OKR sights on.
We encourage you to check out our show page for links to everything we discussed today and more. Visit us at aka.ms/theintrozone.
You can also send us your questions and feedback for the SharePoint teams. You can reach us via email at theintrozone@microsoft.com or via Twitter. Find us at SharePoint, at mcashman, and at cmcnulty2000.
Please take an OKR, make it a goal to rate, review, and tell all your friends about the show. And follow us wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Thank you so much for listening. We're your hosts, Mark Cashman and Chris McNulty. This has been The Intrazone, a show about the Microsoft 365 goal-setting intelligent intranet.